Toronto Maple Leafs fall for the first time while leading after two periods. They lose in a shootout, and this was a very rough game. The Leafs were leading 2-0 against the worst team in the NHL. They come out, they get a power play in overtime. Doesn't matter. They lose the game in a shootout of all things. It was a disappointing game. The Leafs lose for the first time in a while. They still managed to salvage 1 point, so there is some positives to take away, but a pretty embarrassing third period heading into it, up 2-0. You assume the Leafs are going to coast to a win, and they did some coasting, but it was not coasting to a win. They tried to just coast. They've been doing too much of that lately. They get the loss, and it was a pretty devastating one in a shootout against one of the worst teams in the league. That being said, they still got a point, and at the end of the day, on to the next one. But man, oh man, what a heartbreaking loss. What's up, Crank, Jim, Bobby, Nick, Joshua, Gentleman, Positive, Justin, Eric, Jeff, everybody in here. It was a weird one. The shootout, I hate the shootout in general, but the shootout, I mean, Georgiev stood on his head. The Sharks played fantastic in that third period. I mean, I'm still frustrated. I can feel the anger inside of me about that loss. I thought after Willie scored that they would win the game. I mean, just one shot away from a win. Todd Toffoli continues to do what he always does against the Leafs and give them troubles, but it was a weird one. And they played really bad in the third period. I think they ran up 2-0 and they thought, okay, we're probably going to be able to actually win the game pretty easily here against the Sharks team, a very young Sharks team that is. You can't really afford to give up points right now. So now we both played between the Leafs and the Panthers. They both played 61 games. Of course, they're tied now with games played. The Leafs are 2 points ahead. One more point would have been huge here. It would have been desperately needed to stay ahead by 3 points. But at the end of the day, I mean, it was a pretty bad performance. Leafs lose it against last place. Yeah, I mean, and I think they were either 21-0 or 27-0. I think it was 21-0 while leading after 3 periods, leading after 2 periods, and they blew that. So, Darius is maybe bad luck. Darius goes to the game and they lose to the Sharks. So we can blame Darius for this loss. I think that's the moral of the story for this one. But ladies and gentlemen, it's a rough one. I'm disappointed. Look at the box score a little bit here. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a pretty brutal loss, one that shouldn't have happened. You saw Matthew Nyes hit a goal, John Tavares hit a goal, but he had a really rough shootout shot there. I mean, they should have won the game. The first 2 periods were solid. They needed to put their foot on the gas there in the third. They did not do that by any means, and it led to them missing out on an extra point. I don't mind when they lose, but when they're trying, I think they just let off the foot off the gas 100%. It's frustrating. I'm annoyed. But at the end of the day, they won 5 in a row prior to this. I think there's something to be said as well about, exactly. Darius is the bad luck. They needed a wake-up call. They've been coasting the last few games. Also, a pretty rough game from Anthony Stolarz. Both of those goals were pretty bad in regulation. One of them, he got his stick hung on at the net. And we also saw Cal Yarncrocs debut. I think he looked fine. One weird play on the goal, but I think he looked okay. He was, driving play a little bit. But at the end of the day, man, oh man, is this going to be a very interesting stretch of play. There's something to be made about, at least got a point in the back-to-back. Yeah, I mean, it is a back-to-back. Let's, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. It was a back-to-back, all these different things. But man, winning 6 in a row heading into a tougher stretch of play would have been fantastic. Sharks with Jack Montreal. Yeah, I mean, the Sharks are playing very solid hockey as of late. They were showing it on the broadcast there. They've been playing good hockey. They played a fantastic third period. I enjoyed, from a hockey enjoyer perspective, put my diehard fandom in the Leafs aside, it was a fun game to watch. And seeing Macklin Celebrini, somehow Georgiev turning back the clock to his Avalanche days, I mean, it was a fun hockey game to watch. And that's the end of the day. That's what it comes down to is, fun hockey. I'm looking at the standings here. So yeah, the Leafs, I believe, are 2 points ahead of the Panthers. Got to give the Sharks credit. They played well. Yeah, I mean, the Leafs need to win this game. They needed to win this game. I mean, you look at, again, we'll get into Cal Yarncroc a little bit later. They just needed to win it. You needed a couple big saves. Wall and Stolarz have now had 3 games in a row between them that haven't been what we expected. It hasn't been up to, the caliber that we expected. But at the same time, it's just such a frustrating loss because you're up by 2 points, or you're up by 2 goals, and they just coast. Panthers won tonight. Interesting. The Panthers played tonight? They did. I get my time mixed up. You are correct. So now they are tied, but the Leafs have a game in hand. So, I mean, it would have been a big one, though. It would have been a big one. And, of course, They don't pass the puck very good. I honestly think that the power play hurt them in overtime because their power play has been bad in general. Although John Tavares got a power play goal today, their power play has been bad in general, and we've seen them play very good as of late in overtime. If they would have just went 3-on-3, they probably would have had a 2-on-1 break, and scored the puck. Yeah, Yarncroc had one really bad play there. I liked a couple of his plays though. He kept the puck in the zone for a little bit. The Lightning are creeping at the pitcher. It's rough. It's rough. Yeah, I mean, I would have preferred Nyes over Tavares. I'm not really sure what happened with Tavares. Mitch Marner also lost his stick, among all things. Also, if you're in here, hit the like button. Let's try to get to 30 likes, 20 likes, or 62 people in here right now. Any insider trade news? We have a lot of videos coming out. Didn't the Leafs get a point? Yeah. So heading into this game, man, people are saying a lot of different things. I don't think the Panthers moved ahead of the Leafs. No, they're tied now. So heading into this game, the Leafs had 60 games played with 78 points. Panthers 61 games played with 77 points. So with a Panthers win, they're at 62 games with 79 points. And with the Leafs, they got 1 point. So they're at 61 games, 79 points. So tied for first in the Atlantic with the Panthers, but the Leafs have 1 game in hand, which isn't a horrible spot to be in. Like, it's a very good spot. They're playing really good hockey, but you needed to win this one. And now you have a rough stretch coming up of Golden Knights and Avalanche Wednesday and Saturday. So, I mean, it's going to be a rough one. It feels like they gave up a point. Yeah, I mean, it was a Leafs loss at the end of the day. That's a very classic Leafs loss, one that Darius was in attendance for. It was rough. It was rough. I'm going to get Jim in here now to, they're both at 79 points. I just double-checked. So they're tied first of the Atlantic. But man, oh man, I mean, with the trade deadline, we now have 1 game before the trade deadline. 1 game against the Golden Knights, and then the trade deadline is going to be there. So, frustrated. Such a frustrating loss. One that they just shouldn't have done. They ultimately should have won that game pretty easily. Your Leafs are a way better team. They've been a great team, but it was not fun from a fandom perspective. But I mean, I don't know. I liked seeing I think it was a pretty fun hockey game. Although at the same time, I hate the shootouts. At least if the hardest game schedule coming up, yeah, they do. Bob, I had a bit of fun. I feel like I had a bit of fun. I mean, until the loss and the third period. The first 2 periods, the shootout was interesting. We hadn't seen one all year, so it was kind of it was a little bit. It was, and the goaltending was unstable. Joseph Wall looked really bad in his last game. Anthony Solars gave up a couple of goals that you wouldn't expect him to give up, just in general. You wouldn't expect that. The power play in overtime was bad. No one was confident. They weren't shooting the puck, and when they were, it was point-blank shots, easy for Georgiev. It might be time for Brad Treliving to make a couple moves here. I mean, I don't know how much longer they can sustain a Connor Timmins and Philip Myers, or Connor Timmins and Simon Benoit third pairing. You have Vegas coming up. It's going to be interesting. Power play OT, how hard is it to fake shot? Yeah, it's interesting. It was a rough one on that front. The Leafs are linked to a ton of players. The NHL around the board is going to be a pretty busy deadline. I believe it's on Friday. I think Eric or Nick, I agree. I think the only time I felt confident was after the Nyes goal at the end of the second period. But even then, they weren't playing great. Second night of it back-to-back. They had an afternoon game yesterday. You can make up all the excuses in the world. I don't think so, Lit. Did Anthony Solars tweak something because kind of off? I don't think so. He didn't look great. It was weird. He played solid in the first 2 periods, had 2 really bad goals in the third, and then played really good in overtime, and then had a interesting, good start to the shootout, and then let in a goal there at the end. But I can't really blame the goaltenders once it gets to the point of a shootout. It would have been nice for them to bail out their goaltender there. But at the same time, it's back-to-back games now where the goaltenders have not lost it for them, but gotten a little bit intriguing, which at the end of the day is interesting. But I'm going to go ahead and get Jim in here to get his thoughts on the game, because it was an interesting one. All right, Jim. It's maybe you can help cool me down a little bit. I'm a bit heated about this one. It's unfortunate. Darius is not here. He's usually the stable presence to calm me down and to not allow me to tweak out here. But I thought they had it won after the William Nylander goal in the shootout. I still think though it was the Leafs got to play better. It was the Sharks played fantastic, and it was. If you're a Sharks fan, you had to be pleased with that game. It was fun to watch. If you were a Sharks fan, on the Leafs side of things, second night of it back-to-back, they played really slow. They were very lazy, unacceptable loss, but it was an interesting game. And I don't mind. I hate shootouts, but one in the season I'll take.
Yeah, Nick, I don't think I'm going to be the calming presence you're looking for this evening, but I'm not looking to throw gas on an already on a tire fire of a game either. But I do need to say some things here, and that I think the Leafs are guilty of some past mistakes in the sense that I think they came out tonight ill prepared for the start that San Jose was going to have. If you look at the first period, San Jose was all over us. We were having difficulty getting the puck out of our end, and San Jose was really kind of dominating play for the most part. And despite the fact that the Leafs did pull out a point, as I said in the comments, like it really does feel like the Leafs gave up a point tonight, and I think they're probably guilty of that old mistake of looking past their opponent and looking ahead rather to the Las Vegas game. I think if you look tonight specifically, like um, they like their poor play recently has been covered up by some wins. And so I'm going to say this. This is probably not going to be a popular comment. But I'm glad. In fact, I wish they actually had lost in regulation tonight. And here's why. And it's because, Nick, you kind of brought this up, and I couldn't agree more. It's the fact that I think sometimes wins cover up bad play and laziness, and I think the Leafs are kind of guilty of that recently. They've got some great wins. I was on a road trip with my boys, so we did the New York, Pittsburgh, and we were in Toronto tonight for that game. And yeah, I mean, although they picked up wins in the last two games prior to tonight, I mean, they didn't look good. And they weren't good defensively, and all those kind of Berube things that we kind of have thought of had gotten rid of some of these bad habits. Yeah, they're starting to show through. Some warts are starting to show, and part of that maybe, Nick, is the fact that there are, even though I still think of them as kids, the majority of the core of this team are now veterans of the league. They've been through this, so much like fans, maybe they're looking forward to the postseason as well. But no, I could not agree with you more, Nick. I think that tonight was a bad game for the Leafs all around, and yeah, and I just want to talk about specifically talk about Austin Matthews' play lately. I think that the 5 minute mark of the third today, there's a time where I saw Austin come out, and he was the Austin that I expect when he's fully healthy. And I'm not going to throw out, speculation, but I'm concerned that there's something bigger going on with him because ever since Four Nations, I've seen him play well, but I haven't seen him play to the dominant player that I know he can be. And I'm concerned that there's something else going on. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, he looks. I don't know. He looks very mid. I mean, him mid.
Yeah,
Austin Matthews is still better than most
sure.
players in the NHL. But yeah, I don't know if it's either an injury, if it's the Leafs starting to coast because it's the tail end of the regular season. But they have something to play for. They're now tied with the Panthers, so
Absolutely.
I'm hoping it's not that. I don't think Craig Berube instilled that into him tonight. You can see his stats. He had an assist. He had 6 shots, but he was on for the whole power play in the overtime period, which again I think hurt them a little bit, which is crazy and dumb to say. I feel like if they were on a
Mm-hmm.
3-on-3 instead of a 4-on-3, they would have had a better chance of scoring on a break or something like that. But I mean, ultimately, yeah, it doesn't look good. And I mean, the Leafs are still winning games, and they're still one of the best teams in the NHL, at least regular season wise. Coming in, they were 27-0 and leading after 2 periods. Of course, they lose in the game against the worst team in the NHL. But yeah, it's a little bit concerning. It's weird. It's a weird thing that's going on. I still think the Leafs are playing fine, and they've won a lot. I mean, they won 5 in a row prior to this game, but at the same time, like they haven't really looked dominant in any of the games either, and it's been hidden by some either
Mm-hmm.
good goalie play or good offensive play, not necessarily from the core four at all times. I think the only really players who've been playing really well as of late. I mean, Mitch Marner's been okay. I think William Nylander's been playing great, and Matthew Nyes has been playing great. And other than that, everyone seems to be coasting a little bit here, and we'll get into Max Domi in a little bit. He looks absolutely terrible, and he has for a while, but
Mm-hmm.
it's been really bad over the past couple games.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue to one of my next points, Nick, is the fact that I think it's interesting to me that the Domi and Robertson line, they've kind of had some moments offensively in the last, let's call it like 10, 15 games or so, but their defensive liability side of their game is so big that it negates any, albeit slight, positivity that their offensive creativity brings. And defensively, yeah, that's a scary line to think going out. Depending on who our first round opponent is, imagine sending those guys out in key situations. Yeah, it's a little frightening. to
Yep.
say the least. You know, and I think I everyone's crapped on Robertson. Robertson, I'll never crap on his work ethic, but I do crap on his defensive responsibility. And at times he does look lost in the defensive zone. Domi in particular, and I have a lot of history with his dad and stuff, and not personally, of course, but I just love his dad, and so I really wanted to love his son in a Leaf jersey, and I don't. I don't, and he looks. I thought we were going to get the player that we saw in Montreal a few years ago, and I think that I'm starting to believe, unfortunately, that player was a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah. It's they signed the contract, and there's a good chance that he's going to be shipped out before the end of the trade deadline. There's been some rumblings about him getting traded to a bunch of different teams, mainly because of the salary. But yeah, obviously, I mean, yeah, he hasn't been good. And players who aren't playing good now, as the trade deadline approaches, you don't really have much room for. I mean, Pontus Holmberg has been outplaying him, and Pontus has been playing really solid as of late. And
Yeah.
another really good game tonight from Pontus Holmberg. So maybe they keep him in town. Even Nick Robertson, like, I mean, he's playing better. He's forechecking a little bit more.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, like, none of these guys are actually contributing to the level that they need from the third and fourth line. And we saw Cal Yarncroc on the fourth line tonight. I mean, an
Absolutely.
up and down game. I think he played okay overall. He had a couple of miscues, especially on one of the goals, but it's his first game back. I'll give him a bit of a pass there. But yeah, I mean, regarding Domi, it's not only rough, but it is real rough.
Yeah, it's really Nick. If I could just jump in, I just read something in the chat. So I'm getting a little bit of pushback of something I said earlier, and I just want to clarify for everyone that's at home listening right now. So I said it would have been beneficial to the Leafs if they lost, and so I wanted to say I don't want them to lose. But what I'm saying is that if you're winning and bad things are happening, sometimes the things that need to be taken in order to get the team back to where they were playing is colored over by success. So sometimes a loss, and regardless, tonight to me, I don't know about everyone else, tonight feels like a loss. And so with that, I think it's beneficial to the team for everyone's eyes to be open in terms of the player and personnel in a loss than to keep winning and but doing so in a really kind of lackluster way is all I meant. But anyway, but no, it's getting back on Domi, Nick. I think the signing was a smart one, and it just it has not worked out for player or for the team the way I think either party would have wanted. Obviously, Ty, excuse me, Domi has a big history, obviously, in the city, and I would think if that he wants this, he does, right? But it just hasn't worked out, and there comes a time where I think both parties have to say, you know what, this isn't working, and I would not. I don't know how they would do that. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a piece that was moving out. I just don't know how many takers there would be for that. But given the fact that the trade deadline is very close now, God, there's so many interesting combinations of things that could possibly transpire. And I think sometimes bad play forces management to make positive team decisions. So we'll see what happens moving forward next.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I think it's probably less about the other team wanting Max Domi and more so making it work because of the salary. That would be my
Right.
initial thought. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure some team will take a flyer on him. I heard some rumblings about the Habs. Funny enough, there's been some interesting
Maybe.
things out there. I mean, any deal that happens with a player that has any bit of salary, Max Domi is probably going to be the one. Not only because it fits logistically on the getting a third line replacing him. He's playing third line center right now. But at the other time, the other side of it as well, you're of course giving up the salary there. And yeah, I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
obviously none of us want the Leafs to lose. Or if there was a game to lose, that could give this team a little bit of a light of fire. They shouldn't need to light a fire on them, but they've been playing very. They've
Right.
been coasting as of late, and hopefully this is a
Absolutely.
bit of
Right.
a wake up call against a really bad, albeit they're playing better lately. They took Winnipeg, the best team in the NHL standings wise, to overtime. Montreal, all these different things, and once you get to overtime and shootouts, especially, it's kind of especially shootouts. It's a flip of a coin there, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I think too, like we can't, we put enough emphasis on the fact that of Tanev and his
Yeah.
absence, and what a big part of our defense he has so quickly become, and what a stabilizing factor he is back there. So his absence, I think it leaks out because it changes all the pairings, and I think from a team management point of view, if you're a forward and you knew that all the lines that have had mixed results as far as success are now all scrambled defensively, you're not going to have the same amount of confidence when you're when you're freewheeling out of the neutral zone, that defenseman is going to be able to make that pass before you hit the red line. So I don't know. I think his presence when he does return, I think that'll add a big time stabilizing, as it has all year, to the entire team in a strange but necessary way, because I do feel that the team does play a little differently when he's not there. Thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, he's the best defensive defenseman. I mean, probably the best defenseman on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So it's like at the end of the day, I mean, not a coincidence, I don't think, not a full one at least, that the goalies have had 2 rough games since his absence, and he's only supposed to miss. I mean, this is the second game. They said a couple games. I would assume he misses Wednesday. He's probably aiming to be back on Saturday. But when he's not playing, it's very evident. And also, not only is it because you're losing one of your best defensemen, but then you have to insert, whether it be, and no disrespect to him, Connor Timmins or Benoit. And I mean, I do ultimately think they're also going to get a defenseman at the deadline. I just think that's something that they're going to do based on the, the rumblings and reports we're hearing. So it's going to be interesting. It's a bad time to lose Tanev, but it's not that bad because rather, if anyone's going to get, injured for any period of time, you never want to see it, of course, but rather now than towards the end of the season, like we saw last year with a couple players, Bobby McMahon.
Nick, I just want to before I go here, I just want to give a quick shout out to San Jose defenseman Jack Thompson, who scored his 3rd goal of the year tonight. And the reason I'm doing that is because he is my son's childhood best friend and former D partner all through AAA and junior hockey. So
wow.
Good for Jack. Yeah, and he's a hell of a kid. And his whole family were down there tonight. And as much as I didn't want to see the team win, I was very happy for him personally. And that's all I got tonight, buddy. I hope Darius recovers from that game. It was a tough one to watch personally, but as Leaf fans, thick skin, we move forward and carry on, right?
Yes, sir. Jim, thanks for calling in. Hopefully everything's good there, buddy. And we'll have another stream for you. And with Darius, everyone, Darius is finally back. He's had a 2-game hiatus. It's unexceptable. 2-game hiatus. Wow,
that's a long day. That's 2 games in the streaming YouTube world. That must feel like a couple weeks to Darius.
Yeah, he's missing it.
And by the way, Nick, I did get your DM. Thank you very much, and I will respond. I've just been kind of busy lately, but yes, absolutely.
No All right. Take it easy, Jim, and we'll be in touch.
You too, brother. Good night.
Take it easy. Everyone, shout out to Jim. Shootout is such a bad way to decide a game. We got to get rid of it. Yes, it is horrible. It's a horrible way to decide the game. Let's get Eric in here. I believe this is Eric. Eric. I believe it's Eric, right? Yes. All right. Well, it was a rough game. Jim hit a lot of good points. Most of the points I was going to bring up. Curious to see what your thoughts are. Rough loss is what it is. We move on.
Yeah, Jim had a couple of good points there, and yeah, the last 2 games hasn't been the Leaf we've seen all year. The game against Pittsburgh wasn't really acceptable, and tonight wasn't really a good game either. I know we're missing Tanev, but against the last team, doesn't matter who we have on the D pair. We should be able to get the full 2 points. At the end of the day, we still got good stats in the standings. We got to be positive about that. But I am concerned that we haven't made any moves yet for anyone, and we see Florida making big splashes and came out with reports today. They're not done. They just put Kachuk on, LTIR. That's like another 9.5. They're probably pulling a Vegas this year. They're going all out. Yeah, it's upsetting to see. Like, if we were anywhere close to making a deal, yesterday or today, we would see some players on the Leafs roster sitting out or scratch, but nothing. So it'll be interesting to see on Wednesday. I think they play Wednesday. Yeah. We'll see what goes on there, but just tough. Like, St. Louis is 1 point out of the playoffs. I don't see them trading their captain. Flyers are only 4 or 5 points out. It's tough. It's Friday can't come any quicker, Nick. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you've been. I know we've all been actually now waiting. I think. They play Wednesday. It'll be a big game against Vegas, and then ultimately, I believe it's Vegas, and that's the Avalanche Saturday. But tomorrow or Wednesday, is the last game before the deadline. I think they're going to make moves, multiple. I don't think it's going to happen until Thursday, though. Thursday or Friday. I think teams are still figuring out if they're going to be buyers or sellers, and I ultimately think it's going to come down to that Thursday, Friday, even right before, as the clock hits 0 type move. We might see one tomorrow. We might see one Wednesday, but my guess would be maybe a minor move tomorrow. But when it pertains to the Leafs, my guess there would be Thursday. That would be my initial gut instinct, and that's what I'm good.
Yeah, it's tough. Everyone's waiting for Mikko Rantanen. Everyone's waiting for that first domino to fall. If he's not staying, then, I do see the Leafs, using up prospect. It is a rental, but at the end of the day, if Marner decides not to stay, at least we have a backup to sign. That's what I'm looking at. Right now, I don't see, as it stands in the standings, like I don't see the Flyers or St. Louis moving from Scott Laughton or Rasmus Ristolainen. Like they're in the playoffs. Like in the East, it's so close, Nick. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Like Buffalo, yeah, they're out of it, but Pittsburgh's the second last team in our conference, and they're only 8 points out from that second wild card. That's not very a big gap with 20 some games left, I believe, in the season. Like that's very, look at Boston. They started the beginning of the season like pretty good in the standings. They lost 5 in a row, and now they haven't been able to climb back. So it's easy for Pittsburgh probably to come back in it. So they probably don't want to sell. You might have to go into like Seattle, or, you might be knocking on the door of the Predators. The Leafs want a right shot defenseman, but there's not much out there. You got the Luke Shen, which I'd love to bring him back a third time around. The trade board, there is Rasmus Ristolainen, which would be nice maybe. But again, for those guys, that's a big cost for the Leafs if they want, a first or a top prospect. Like Leafs are looking for retention. If they're not moving money off the books here, especially with Yarncroke tonight, which he played pretty good tonight.
Yeah,
lots of energy and speed. He looked pretty good. So I can see the Leafs kind of seeing what he has Wednesday against Vegas. But I don't think Holmberg is going to be staying. I think he's just a showcase right now. Everyone's playing good right now because their jobs are on the line. But we haven't seen this from Pontus all year, even from Robinson. They're playing good right now, but I can see where they might be heading off because if they're looking to make some trades, they got to make room on the books.
Yeah.
Tanev's only supposed to be missing 3 games on the IR, so who does that leave us? Domi, maybe he's going out. Leafs are looking for retention, so it's going to cost them quite a bit this year, whether it's their first round from next year or some prospects. They're looking for some retained salary.
Yeah.
What's your thought?
Yeah, I think Domi is probably going to be the one who goes. My guess would be Domi. I think Scott Laughton is a realistic option. We've been talking about him for so long. We'll have a bunch of videos tomorrow and some other targets from some rumblings that we've been hearing. But I mean, at the end of the day, it is going to be a hectic week. Pontus has been playing fantastic. Not fantastic. He's playing okay. Better than he was. Fantastic's definitely a stretch. It's interesting, and we're gonna have to just wait and see. And that's the unfortunate reality of this. Like, I think Scott Laughton's probably the most likely. There's some other guys in there. As Jim comes in with the 5 gifted. I don't have the animation here.
Boy, Jimmy.
Jim with the 5 gifted. Hopefully get the memberships back up before the playoffs start. Gordon, John, Tino, Mark, everyone, if you got a membership from Jim, we're working on more emotes and stuff behind the scenes as well. So make sure to thank Jim. Jim, thank you very much. Again, if you got one, make sure to thank Jim. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a trade. It's going to be a busy trade deadline. It's just a matter of what they actually are, what becomes available, because there's so many teams packed close together in the conference where I don't think teams are going to decide till the very last minute, and some might just stay put in hopes that they can make and sneak into a playoff spot.
It's just the third line centers, like the cost for them this year. I've never seen it where it's this, like you might as well try to fight for a second seat, which is why they were talking about that this year. I'd love to see a package deal with, Scott Laughton and Ristolainen, and like that's a right-handed shot defenseman, a perfect world. I'd love to have, Braden Chen and Colton Parayko. That would just be amazing, but we're not going to see that.
Yeah, there's no way. It's like maybe I don't even think Mikko Rantanen is going to become available. I think the Carolina Hurricanes are going to hold on to him.
Would you hold on to him and let him walk for nothing? You just got, you sent Marty Necas over, a couple of good players from your team, and you're not seeing, you let him walk. That's like what the Leafs are doing with Marner. They're going to wait, but yeah, you free up the cap space, but you can't get him traded at the trade line unless you tell him like, hey, like you're going to get your money's worth here. But at the end of the season, if they don't want to re-sign him, like he's just walking, and then who does that leave with the Leafs? Like Mikko can play the rest of the year with Carolina, and then hopefully the Leafs are going to try to sign him in the offseason. But there's a lot of teams out there that has a lot of cap room to sign this guy, like Chicago, or there's a lot of teams out there. It's tough what they're going to do. It's either they're going to try to take a big swing at Mikko and use all their prospects for a rental and hope to re-sign him. But if that happens, like I'm sure they're going to want like a Matthew Nyes in that deal or something, because he's playing great and he's going to be getting an $8 million raise probably.
Yep.
Like he's going to be getting more than Slavkovsky, I think.
Yep, Nick Bukestad as well is another guy who is interesting. It is, also like I think everybody is. Brad Trilling came out and said the sellers, there's not many of them, so they're all going to wait, bid the prices up higher with each other, and then trade whoever's left at the end of it, or whoever they want to trade. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting, Eric. It's a scary time. We'll be live on Friday as well for it. So
I just hope they don't go with like a Jake Evans. I know like money wise it's okay, but that's not the kind of player like that we need going into the playoffs. Like we need someone with grit. And
Yep.
That's why I liked, a Lawton or, a Shen, because they're not afraid to get in the mix on that third line. Like the Winter Classics, like he dropped the gloves with Foligno, Shen. Like he's not afraid to get in the fight or get in there and stick up for his teammate. I watched the game yesterday because I'm just curious about Luke Shen when they played against the Rangers, and like this was after Rempe's fight, but Rempe was at the nets and stirring, trying to mix up some stuff here, and Shen just grabbed him and like went up to his face. Like we need that kind of player. Like we got McCabe that's not afraid to fight, but he's also had like 3 concussions this year. Like he needs to slow down a bit here. Like Shen has no fear, and that's kind of like what we need as like a third line center.
yeah, I would love it.
Like, what's your thought? Like, if they don't, if it's not a Lawton, or I definitely think it's not a Shen because they're like 1 point out of the playoff. But do you see like O'Reilly coming back? Like, Fred said like the doors are open, but like not for their core. So
Right.
I guess that's Marshall Show, Stamkos. I guess O'Reilly's part of that.
Yeah.
Not sure what other, like Philip Forsberg or
Yossi. Like out of that, not really anyone on that team, to be honest. Like I don't know. I think it's really narrowed down to the guys you already mentioned. Unless other players come up, there's been some other names that have been thrown around there. Adam Larson's been a name that's been thrown around. Kunin's been a name that's been thrown around. Like, it's tough. I think if they don't get Scott Lawton or someone like that, you look at some of the other sellers, but it becomes, Brock Nelson, Yanni Gourde, Nick Bukestad, those are the guys we've been hammering about all along. I feel like it has to be one of them. But Brock Nelson, I don't think he's going to get traded to the Leafs. Yanni Gourde dealing with the injury, possible, was linked recently. We had a video on that. So there's not much there.
He's supposed to be back this week.
He will be.
He was supposed to be back a week before. I'm not sure if he's played yet, but I haven't seen any update on that.
He will be back. Yep, he will be back. So that's why Leafs are linked heavily to him having for a while. I could see that one actually happening because I can't imagine they're gonna, the Kraken are trying to get a ton of value for Yanni Gourde. So, I'm hoping that would be something like that would happen. I don't even love the player. I don't love the fit, but it doesn't. I don't know if we're gonna be able to be picky this trade deadline, and it goes for other teams too. It's not just the Leafs. I think if you're trying to improve a ton, you might be in for a rough go, which is different than, last trade deadline and other ones where you had, a bunch of players available really. And a lot of this has been technically a crazy trade deadline because, we talk about all the trades that went down, Mikko Rantanen, a bunch of other ones as well. But now that we're actually at the deadline, I don't know if we're going to see the moves like we saw last year. Sean Monahan, Tyler Toffoli, a lot of those type of players there. Maybe they trade Tyler Toffoli again. The Sharks do. It'll be interesting.
There's a lot of good like centers, but like a lot of it's rentals. I'm like, do we want the only way I'm using, our prospects, or it's probably just on Mikko Rantanen. Like I wouldn't see myself using it on anyone else other than Lawton or Shen with retention. But like everything's expensive this year, and especially if they don't trade Shen, well, the price for Lawton just went up. Like Daniel Briere is the manager for the Flyers, and he knows what goes on, right? Yep. All the managers do. So if we see that they don't have access to Shen, well, guess what? Your price just went up. And I don't think any of the players are going to come out of the East because like it's such a tight race, Nick. It's crazy. Like looking at the standings now, like I said, Pittsburgh has 58. They're second last, and the Red Wing has 66. So they're only like 8 points out. Everyone, it's still the Habs. I think they got a W tonight, so they're only 1 point out. It's
absurd.
Senators won in a loss in a shootout or overtime. They're 1 point out. Like I've never seen it this close before. So the East, they're probably not big sellers this year unless teams are offering above price, like crazy price. So you look at the West. Well, you got the Sharks, the Blackhawks. Like I see maybe a Ryan Donato, like maybe something like that because the Sharks are out of it. The Preds, Krakens, the Ducks are only like 6 points out. Like I don't see anyone making trades unless it's Seattle, Predators, Blackhawks, or the Sharks. But who do we want on all those teams? A couple of centers, but Yanni Gord has 1 year left, so it's tough. And he's been injured, so how do we know he's not going to come back and get hurt?
They have to get it done sooner than later. And
the only thing I think is what they do, Nick, is like they keep Domi at center, then they find wingers like Brandon Tanev or something. Like who knows what they're going to do? They want a center, but if the price is just too ridiculous, like they're just going to keep Domi at center and Calle Yarncroke, like just find a winger maybe for the top 6 or Pacioretty's on LTIR, like Hockenpah, he's not coming back this year, so like they're gonna have to move some money and get some attention, and it'll be interesting to see what's gonna happen within these next couple of days for sure.
Yeah, I think ultimately we'll have some clarity tomorrow into Wednesday, and then by then I think moves will probably start flying, or at the very least we'll have reports about who's available and who's not, especially as it pertains to Mikko Rantanen, some of the other guys as well.
Yeah.
So
everyone's waiting for that just to see what he's doing, whether he's staying or going. And if he's saying he's staying, then we're going to see plan B from everyone's decisions. Like they're just waiting for that because that's
100%.
That's the big piece everyone's been wanting. Like he still hasn't accepted that offer from Carolina, so he doesn't know yet.
You're right. I mean, yeah, it's going to be 100%. Everything's waiting and surrounding that. I think ultimately they stick with him, but it'll be interesting to see. Eric, any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Yeah, so like I said, the last 2 games weren't the prettiest. We still got 3 points out of 4. We're in a good spot. I'm glad that the Panthers beat Tampa Bay. Like the top, us and the Panthers. I'd rather that than have a 3-way tie. Like let's try to get a buffer over the Lightnings. Get them down in the standings a bit, and so we can have a more comfortable cushion there because the Tampa Bay were rolling there with 8 straight wins, and we need to settle that down. And the Leafs also play like Florida 3 more times this year, so those games are going to be important. And might I say, like I tuned in on the Florida game, and Jones was looking good out there. So the Leafs are for sure going to have to find some depth and shut down defense for sure because the Panthers they're looking for a repeat too.
Yeah, other teams have made moves, and now it's up to Brad Treliving to actually answer the bell and hopefully pull off something that he really does, which is make some some big moves at the trade deadline. But Eric, it was a pleasure, and trade deadline's approaching. It's almost your time to shine here, and we're days away now, days away at this point.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for letting me come in on the call, Nick, and we'll chat, and I'm sure in the next few days.
Yes, sir. Game Wednesday. We'll be live for that. Take it easy, Eric. Everyone yes, sir. Everyone in the chat. Great call in from Eric and Jim tonight. And ultimately, we move on. The Leafs lost. Trade deadline's just around the corner. There's other things to shift our focus to. So let's wrap up. Before we do, we can get on the 3 stars of the night. Everybody leave your 3 stars in the chat. My third, I'm going to have to think about this one. My 3rd star of the night is going to go to John Tavares. Despite having a pretty rough shootout there, he ultimately had a decent game. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, these 3 stars are going to be tough. So yeah, John Tavares, probably give him the 3rd star. Matthew Nyes, I'm going to go with the 2nd star of the night. Or 1st star of the night, sorry, for Matthew Nyes. And the 2nd star, I'll go to Mitch Marner. I think he played okay. He played 27 minutes. I mean, no one really played well. I'm very curious to see what your guys' 3 stars are. I mean, probably Nyes is the 1st star. Marner and John Tavares. I mean, maybe Matthews. I don't think he looked great tonight. I don't have Darius here to have his thoughts. I'm curious to see what you guys think about it, but probably those three: Nyes, Marner, and John Tavares. Tavares had a goal and an assist. Nyes has scored in 3 straight as well. I mean, you could put John Tavares as the first star as well. I mean, ultimately, in the loss, no one really, ultimately, no one's super, no one cares too much when they lose a game like that in heartbreaking fashion. John Tavares had almost 7 minutes on the power play tonight. I mean, you could throw an honorable mention to guys like Nick Robertson. He played pretty solid given his role. Pontus Holmberg as well. I mean, it was what it was. But ladies and gentlemen, a fantastic stream as per usual. Darius will be back. I agree, Nick. Darius will be back for the stream on Wednesday, so we'll be back to the usual. But ladies and gentlemen, lots of time left. We're going to have multiple videos for you tomorrow. We're probably 3 videos tomorrow, so make sure you stay tuned for those. Your guys' support has been unbelievable. Take it easy.
Digest your daily dose of gold. Stories of the bold where legends are told. From first pop drop to the seasons fold.